Great. Let me go ahead and because I'm wanting to look at the meeting on my computer because I feel like you're going to share screens and presentations. But my
Yeah.
camera's only working on my phone because I just moved into my new house and my Xfinity signal is not awesome. So they're going to be here tomorrow to fix it. So sorry about that. But let me get a window open with our agenda so that I can start the meeting and lead us through it. So pardon my delay. I love the packet, by the way. Great job, staff. Fun read, 51 pages long. Love that. All right. So it is April 28th, and the time is 12:05 p.m. I would like to call this meeting of the Salem-Keizer Area Transportation Study Policy Committee to order. Let's see. And do we need to, can we just note attendance so that I know who's in the room? Because I'm looking at something that's about half the size of.
You have Anna, Della, Kyle, and Mel on the PC are here.
Okay.
Kim, Steve, and myself, Ray, are staff. And then we have two public, Tammy and Jacqueline. And
Excellent. Thank you, Mike.
Three of them because they're they're not in view of the camera. So they're way in the back.
Yeah. I'm familiar with the traditional seating arrangement. Would you mind helping me field questions as other policy committee members have them, Mike? Just because I'm afraid with my limited capacity here, I may not do the best job facilitating.
We can do that. And Mike are both not here. So the mayor of Turner is not here, and Mike Jaffe's on vacation. So
okay. Well, then we really are a lean crew today.
Yeah, it should be a short meeting.
And mighty.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, now that we are officially called to order, and thank you for helping me organize things in this hybrid setting, I would like to move on to agenda item B, which is approval of the policy committee minutes for March 24th, 2026.
I motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, can we call a vote? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. And now right here in item C on our agenda, we have an opportunity for public comment. And I'm sure you know, I was so happy to read all of the comments that came in our packet. Both the one at the very top and all the others. So if there are other people here to provide public comment, or they're online or in the room, you'd really make my day. Do we have anyone that is signed up for or present and wishing to give public comment?
No public comment.
Submitted mine in writing.
Tammy and
need to hear the same thing.
Tammy and Jacqueline submitted for Greater Northeast Keizer Neighborhood Association, and that's included. So,
And do we? Is there anybody on the committee that would like to have any? I guess we can't really discuss the public comments that were submitted, but it was I really enjoyed, as I said, reading through all of them. So I guess until it's an agendaed matter, we can't really take up discussion within the committee. So as much as I would like to dive into those topics, if there's no one signed up, I believe we can move on to item D, which is the review of public comments on the draft Salem-Keizer Area Transportation Study Federal Fiscal Year 2027-32 Transportation Improvement Document. And that will be Steve and Kim.
Okay, I'm just sharing my screen right now, and let me full screen it. And there we go. Okay, so the purpose of this agenda item is to talk about the comments we received during our 30-day comment period on the draft tip document. That's a required period where we prepare the whole draft and we put it out for public comment. So there were 19 comments that we received. There's also a couple other comments that we'll talk about as well that came outside of the comment period for this, but are relevant to the final adoption of the tip. Wanted to bring those a question from there forward as well. So the comment period was held from February 25th through the end of March. And like I said, we received 19 comments from the public during that time frame. Some of the outreach that Kim and I did were, we did email newsletters and posted information on our website, but we also hosted a virtual open house, which had information about projects and links to the full document and its appendices. And we held an in-person open house on March 10th downstairs here at the COG offices. And then Kim and I visited 5 neighborhood partnership teams throughout February and March, where we just talked about the tip document, what it was, and encouraged attendees at those meetings to participate. And the neighborhood partnership teams, they're not the neighborhood level meetings, they're kind of they make up a larger geographic areas. It's a group, they're organized by the Salem Leadership Academy, and there's 5 of them that cover Salem-Keizer. So they were really good outlets to reach a larger amount of people who are kind of community leaders and interested in civic engagement in general. As far as the comments we received, there's folder information in the packet as part of the attachment, but I'll just do an overview on the slides here. We heard as far as support, we heard support for several of the projects that are in the tip document. So the Orchard Heights and Glen Creek pedestrian improvement infrastructure project, the SKATS funded project that received a couple different comments of support from members of the public. The Commercial Street Urban Upgrades project that is going to be near the future site of the South Salem Transit Center also received support from one member of the public. Same with the South Salem Transit Center that receives support from a member of the public. And then lastly was the, as far as individual projects, was the Oregon 22 Rick Reel to Dokes Ferry project, as well as the interchange project. That's sort of the, subset of that project, or the current iteration of it. We also heard strong support just more generally for bike, pedestrian, and transit projects as a part of I guess several different commenters. Some of them were making project specific comments there, and some were just more general of we'd like to see more of these types of projects funded in the region. Sadie, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I'm looking at the OR 22 Real Dokes Ferry. Were those both comments in support? I feel like there was not looking at the same time, and I don't have good notes to refer to this time. Was one suggesting, was that the one where there was a suggested phasing, or was that the Orchard Heights Glen Creek? Sorry, I was thinking both comments were generally supportive of the project that I'm thinking of, but one was like, however, right? I think it's from Mr. Forney, who is.
Okay, yeah, so that relates
Mhm.
to he was using the Orchard Heights Glen Creek pedestrian project as an example. In his comment, it's actually on the next
Yeah.
slide, so I'll go to that.
Oh, okay.
What I'll start at the bottom here because that's the bullet point relates to what he was referencing. So the West Salem Neighborhood Association gave comments that were sort of broadly about the suggestions for our scoring criteria for both the tip. So the next time we go through our application scoring, but as well as the long range metropolitan transportation plan. So all this will come up again when we talk more about the scoring criteria for the long range plan. But yeah, so generally their comments related to suggestions for updating the equity criteria, as well as regional gap significance. And then the project delivery part, I think, is the part that you're talking about. There was a suggestion of could trying to think of how to phrase this exactly. It related to splitting
Could we
projects
address the
that
highest need first? Right, wasn't it?
Right, seeing if the safety related parts of a project could be implemented first by splitting out redoing the definition of the projects and doing that first and then the remainder later for project delivered.
right. So, and I think the
And
example
so
there
I
was
guess,
go ahead.
oh, I was just wondering, so as we're discussing this and it seems that there is overlap, are we, when we're just kind of like broadly categorizing the comments, are we saying that was support for that project, or is this sort of enumerated as separate? Because I didn't go through and tally it up as I was looking at the comments that came through. I'm just wondering how we're considering it vis-a-vis these slides.
It's separate.
Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it's separate.
Okay.
So we also had another commenter who's really tracked that project. Someone who lives in West Salem has tracked that project and has been giving their support at various steps in the process. So that's the one that's referenced on the previous slide. That's the
Okay, super. Thank you very
that's the
much.
top there. Yeah. So other comments were we heard concern about so I talked about the support for this project, the Oregon 22 Rick Reel to Dokes Ferry project. We also heard concern from a neighbor who lives in that area, specifically questions about cost and environmental impact. I did forward that information to Anna Henson at ODOT and gave them ODOT the correct contact at ODOT to reach out to regarding that project, and any questions or concerns that they had. Other comments were during our open house, we had a suggestion to update the project description for it's a little bit older project, the Commercial Street Vista to Ratcliffe. And a member of the public just suggested that we update the project description to be a little bit more detailed. So I checked with Salem Public Works and we made that change already so that it actually mentions the planned protected bike lane. That's a part of that project now. Support for commuter rail between Portland, Salem, and Eugene. It's kind of a broader concept suggestion. And we heard that from one commenter during this outreach stage. And then the last one I mentioned already, that's the West Salem Neighborhood Association suggestions on the evaluation criteria, which won't come into play for this tip cycle, but is something that we're going to consider as part of our long range plan. And then we can revisit when we get to that stage again in our next project selection cycle. So,
May I ask a
yeah, go
clarifying
ahead.
question? And just I would be wildly supportive of commuter rail between Portland, Salem, and Eugene, but that is well beyond our MPO boundary, and we don't have a rail partner at this policy committee table. Would those even be how would we approach a funding conversation like that?
Do you want to answer that?
Sure. There are discussions in the past, as in like 24 years ago or so, about commuter rail, and the governance is the first one of the main hurdles because it would reach at least four metropolitan areas, four MPOs, and four counties, I think. So that's an issue. Funding is an issue. It's one of those larger concepts that is being thought about. It would involve ODOT and everybody else to figure out how this could move forward, and it would probably entail some action by the Oregon legislature, possibly create a larger organization authority to operate or to deal with commuter rail that's spanning Portland to Eugene. There's already Amtrak Cascade between Portland and Eugene, and that's funded by ODOT. But I think the commuter rail tends to be using the Portland and Western line. So
yeah, I just wanted to clarify for myself and maybe for the benefit of others on the committee that as lovely as it sounds, it's really the kind of project that is beyond the scope of our capabilities. And certainly if something came before the legislature, we could maybe send somebody in to testify and say, oh, yeah, we've heard it from our, the folks that we represent in the policy committee. But it's not the kind of project that we would, I guess at some point it would have to be included in the tip if it happened, but anyway,
maybe.
Yeah,
maybe. It depends where the funding comes, and
right.
there's a lot of questions to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but for now, it's a great idea, but it's not a comment that is very actionable for us.
No, and the long range plan, it's identified as an outstanding issue just because it has been around for at least 24 years. Right. Probably longer.
Okay, so those two slides that I just showed wrap up the comments that came in during the 30-day comment period. And I do have more to cover on a couple more slides, but just before I go on to that, from what we received there, I mentioned the update to the project description we did to the Commercial Street project, shared out contact info for other project questions or concerns. And then the West Salem Neighborhood Association, because those comments were specific to the criteria scoring, we're beyond that point in this process, but for this cycle, but it's something we can carry forward as part of our next tip cycle. And then, like I mentioned, our long range plan. So my kind of thought or recommendation or what I see is that we don't really have any other, based on the public comments, any other edits or changes to the draft that we need to suggest that at least from this set of comments. So that being said, there is another comment that came in where I do think we need to have a little bit of discussion about how we treat it and how it's discussed in the draft. So I'll talk about that now. So at the January Policy Committee meeting, John Zielinski from the Easy Orchards Market attended and testified and submitted a petition that was in opposition to specifically the roundabout proposal as part of the Court and Hazel Green project. I think it was supportive of other interventions at the intersection, but specifically the concerns were about ingress and egress to business, construction timeline. One of the bigger ones, I think, was the agricultural equipment navigating roundabout and a general preference for a signal at that location. So we'll just kind of show you how it's documented in the draft right now, and then I'll give some background about what we talked about with the TAC at the meeting 2 weeks ago. So this project is has funding identified for design as part of our supplemental illustrative project list. And what that means is that that phase of the project is included in our financial planning, but it's not actually programmed for funding at this point. So it's listed just as a bullet point in Chapter 6, and it's not included in our actual breakdown of tip tables. It's also presented in the appendices where we break down our list of supplemental illustrative projects. It's the fourth one here on the list. And we break out the funding amount that was taken from the application submitted by Marion County. So it's on that list for about $1.6 million for design work. And then the not recommended project list in that same appendix includes the right-of-way and the construction phases of that project. So when we talked about this a little bit with Marion County as well as with the TAC, what we heard was Marion County staff express interest in updating the project to an intersection study. And what we did was, we sort of talked about what that would mean at least a little at a high level, and then we wanted to discuss it with our committees because it's different than what the application that was reviewed as part of the process looked like. And that application was really specific to a roundabout as what would take place at that intersection. So likely if there was a shift in this direction, it would require an updated cost estimate and just a little bit of rethinking about what that would look like. So when we talked about it with the TAC at the meeting earlier this month, we just talked about like what options would we consider? Do you just leave the project as is? And there's comments and maybe there's some thought about what direction Marion County might go forward. So we could just leave it as is, or the project could come out of the tip, or we just add a little bit more context. And what we discussed with the TAC was adding a footnote to the project listing, as I showed on a couple slides back here. So it would just be a footnote here that would give a little more context about the project. And again, it's not in the tip tables, so that saves us a little bit of the editing and finagling of the project, because ultimately for this phase to be funded or anything to be funded, it would have to come for review again with our committees. So the consensus that we heard from the TAC was to add a footnote with some context, and I just drafted a kind of a rough sketch of what that might be. So what I put here was Court and Hazel Green roundabout or intersection study. And then at the bottom of the page, it would say, specifically say the application submitted is for design and construction of a roundabout. Updated description and cost estimate will be needed if the project moves forward as an intersection study, reviewing other design options. And then the last sentence is TAC and policy committee discussion to take place if and when this project is reviewed for inclusion on the funded project list. And my purpose with that was just to be mindful of the process we went through when we reviewed the original application, but also give some note that the full decision about funding and direction of that project could change, but it would be reviewed ultimately by our committees. So that's kind of the question, the outstanding question I had is if that makes sense, if that sounds good. And unfortunately, Marion County's not here today, but we can definitely follow up with them because I think they're obviously going to have, well, at least at the staff level, I think they were supportive of something along these lines.
May I make a comment?
Yeah.
So I'm just, we've already discussed this. I mean, it seems like this is being given a lot of attention and weight. And I'm not understanding quite sure why that is, because one business on the corner has some concerns about it. They're welcome to have concerns. They should. They exercise the process just like everybody else did. And the petition I looked at very thoroughly, and a lot of those signatures are from people not living in the area. It wasn't substantially compared to the roundabout in Polk County, which Chair Wardhorse said had opposition at first, but then after it was built, had some pretty good positive attention to it. So I just want to put that on the record that we did talk about this, and I just want to make sure that it's not just squeaky wheel getting the grease necessarily, but that it's treated as equally as the rest of the public comment that came in, as well as the actions. He's diligent. I will give him that. He's done his homework. I mean, he's very organized, and I understand his his concern, but there's just more to it than a business.
I had a question. Now, is there special dollars that are being used for this because it's a roundabout, or is there anything special?
No, it's not. And like mentioned, because it's on the supplemental list, it's not officially funded at this point. So yeah, but the short answer is no.
Special, if you do a roundabout, you can get this funding.
That's a good question.
It is a good
Yeah.
question, because it could qualify for arts funding through the county, all roads, transportation, safety. But so not even, so the design is not funded even at this point. Okay.
This is on the list for
Yeah.
consideration for the, if money appeared next time.
Right.
I think if it were on the funded list, this would be a harder conversation.
Yeah.
And so my thinking with just adding the context is that we're acknowledging comment and just providing so that if someone looked at the tip and they were not really familiar with what was in there, they wouldn't, see this project in there as without a little bit more context, I guess.
My next thought is, and I imagine ODOT already has this information, but there's roundabouts everywhere now. And is there a limitation for these low boys? I just rolled through Malala, the one on 213. That's the first time I'd gone through it last week, and I'm going, well, this is probably similar in size to the Hazelgreen one, because you see all different sizes. I mean, Bend and Sisters and all of those new ones going in there. Everything seems to run so much smoother through those roundabouts. It's like everywhere I go, enjoy those things because I don't get stuck in a line forever like I used to in Sisters. And
Sisters is awful. Sorry. It was before, yeah.
But it just seemed, I mean, it's still not fast, but it's consistent, it's smooth, and it just goes. The same with the one in Walla there. It's like that is great. Everything, I mean, it was slow. Everybody's down to like 20 miles an hour through that intersection. But it moved and there was no stopping and waiting for 10 minutes for traffic.
Could it be just educational issue? More Marion County staff going out and explaining how this works.
Right, that's why I figured ODOT probably already has this as an overall, that this information can be distributed and say, hey, we already have this, right? No problems here where big trucks are going.
Chair Mordos mentioned that last time that Polk County had a rodeo or whatever for, no?
Marion County had
Marion
a,
County,
The county
yeah,
had-
that's.
they had a rodeo, a roundabout rodeo for the Butteville
Okay,
Ellen Road roundabout, which is currently in design. So and that's gonna be a smaller one than like what ODOT does. That's a farm area. And
I
they
could go watch one of those. It sounds exciting.
yeah, so you might be able to, they took some drone video of that, the
Mhm.
consultant did, and I think they're gonna make that available so people can see it, but apparently it went very well.
but I know that, various places, when they bring in roundabouts, they always invite truckers or people who have little boys or whatever. It's, yes, you can get your trucks around and through
Yeah.
these new,
I
roundabouts.
haven't seen any problems with Kaiser, and it's a pretty small.
It is pretty small.
But
And we see
I think
trucks
Kaiser
with it,
tracks
no
up
problem.
over the.
Yeah.
The
Right.
inside curb, and it's designed that way, so I'm sure that it works.
He has some legitimate concerns about egress and, getting in and out of his businesses right there on the corner, and I understand that. But I don't think it would be designed to purposefully block it, right? There would be ways to get in and out, and I hope it is a solution.
Sadie had a comment.
Sorry, can I? Yeah, I want to, as much as we might enjoy playing transportation engineers, we're a policy committee. And so I don't think that we have the technical know-how or the sort of purview to explore the merits of the project. Instead, how it sits within the plan. And I wanted to ask, I think we got an answer from Kevin last time. This is a project that is included in the Marion County Transportation System Plan.
It's in the Cordon Hazel Green plan, and it's listed there as either a roundabout or a signal.
It's also in the draft rural TSP.
Okay, so it's also in the draft new rural transportation system plan. Which I don't think
As
is done.
either a roundabout or a signal?
I believe so.
Okay. Okay.
In the Cordon Hazel Green plan, it's either. Cordon Cooper, sorry.
Yeah. I guess, so let me look at the proposed footnote again. TAC and policy committee discussion take place if and when. So I guess I'm not, can you just take us back to what happens if we move forward with this project listed in our transportation improvement plan with the footnote? The footnote just acknowledges that a project that was submitted is not actually what we want to fund, and we're going to keep it here, but we don't actually know what it's going to cost, or is that about the sum of it?
Yeah, it kind of does muddy it a little bit, but it's not in, so I mean, there is a section in the tip, which is the list of projects that are funded and the year they're funded for. And so that has all the specifics. This is in a section that is just identifying the projects that were selected as part of the SKATS process and mentions the supplemental list of projects that we're using as part of our longer term financial planning. And so what I was thinking with this footnote as written was that it would be included there to provide just a little bit more context that it's possible that the project sponsor could be rethinking the project. And if that were the case, there would be a different cost estimate. And then the last sentence, I think, would take place regardless, because it's not a fully funded project yet. We would be discussing it as a group if it were reviewed for inclusion on the funded project list, regardless of what path the project moves forward.
Right. And I know that the policy committee did not choose to pay much heed to the selection criteria that the TAC used to rank the projects. Do we know how this ranked?
No, we didn't rank any of the, oh, I see in the broader scoring. No, I don't know right now. I'd have to look at. But we didn't rank any of the supplemental projects. They're just all included there as part of a list that would be revisited. So there's no priority
Okay.
that's given to the 4 projects that are on that supplemental list. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not giving a lot of, I guess, on the one hand,
I guess maybe I'm getting confused about.
sure.
So we have our included projects.
Yes.
We have our illustrative projects. And then this is neither of those.
Well,
I'm
okay,
sorry
so
for my very basic questions here.
no, it's okay. I think it is confusing. So we have our projects that are funded, and some of those have illustrative phases that are in 2031 or 2032. And then in addition to those, we have our supplemental illustrative projects, which are the 4 projects on this list here, the Orchard Heights and Glen Creek right-of-way and construction, the Wheatland right-of-way and construction for the Wheatland Road project.
Okay.
And both of those projects have design in the funded project list. The paratransit vehicle replacement, which has funding for $1.5 million in the funded project list, and then the remaining portion is on the supplemental illustrative list. And then Corden Hazel Green, it doesn't have anything on the funded list at this point. It's just preliminary engineering that's on the supplemental illustrative list.
Okay.
And like I said, there's no ranking amongst these 4 projects or phases about what would take place, what would move forward first.
Really? That's not what you guys told me. When you split the paratransit vehicles in half, the information that I got and brought back to the board was we were first in line.
I mean, well, there's part of the project that, like I said, the first 1.5 million is on the funded project list, but I guess the way I would look at it is these projects have different scale, different cost amounts. And so there could be opportunities to move one forward versus another, either depending on funding type or timing or just scale. Because some of them, like the Wheatland Road project for right-of-way and construction, is a lot higher price tag than, for example, the rest of the paratransit vehicle or the Orchard Heights pedestrian infrastructure project.
But there was a lot of proposed projects that didn't make either of these lists, correct?
Yeah. So this bottom table C3 is how they appear in the appendix. And so there are a number of full projects that didn't make the funded list, and then the rest of the Corden Hazel Green roundabout project for right-of-way and construction didn't make the full list either.
It seems to me, and if staff's recommendation is that we revisit this conversation when Marion County is at the table to advocate for their project, fine. But it does seem to me that this is a pretty dramatic shift in project scope from a built roundabout to an intersection study. And I don't know that the TAC in considering project prioritization when looking at proposals coming in, or the policy committee would sort of view it through the same lens. So I think it is worth having a continued conversation about its inclusion in our transportation improvement plan.
Yeah, I agree, and that could be an outcome, is that it would resubmit or be rethought entirely. I tried to write the footnote as just neutrally as possible, and just say that an application was submitted for a roundabout. And then that middle sentence is just really thinking if circumstance or preference change. I'm just trying to acknowledge that before stating that it would come back before the TAC and the PC. And I don't right now know what that process would look like. But yeah, I guess I don't have anything else I can add to that right now. So my goal was just to add a little
When do
more
we need to? But when are we forced by our timeline as a policy committee to make a decision on this?
Next month, we're going to ask for adoption in the TIP. So we could have this statement or a slightly revised statement. And but that would be the point in time where we're going to ask to adopt the TIP overall. And then at that point, we wouldn't be editing the document other than project level amendments that take place. So.
That kind of puts things in a tough position, because we're really at in our final hours of being able to decide on what goes in this plan and what doesn't, and we don't have Marion County at the table, and we have a dramatic shift in scope in one of their $1.5 million included projects.
But it's not.
We're not. Yeah.
It's not. Just to reiterate, this project is not in the part of the funded TIP. It is part of the list of projects that will be considered, that were identified by the policy committee to be considered. There's no guarantee it will be funded. And, as when Marion County brings it around for funding, whether it's during the period of this TIP or more likely in the next TIP cycle, they can update the project description to say we're going to do an intersection study and then do X. Or they might fund an intersection study prior to submitting it to a TIP, so we have more clarity. This project is unique in it because of that limbo land of we're not giving up money, but it's in the TIP. So it's probably more conversation generating than actual need.
Yep.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. I'm happy with our conversation. Well, I'm satisfied with our conversation here. We can move on.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I think that was my last slide for this. So are there any other questions or thoughts about any of the other public comments that I reviewed? And like I mentioned, a couple of things updated and edited already in terms of project description for the commercial street project. And then we have the West Salem Neighborhood Association comments to review in the future. And then as far as comments, public comments go, we're not proposing any other changes other than the edits that we just discussed on the Gordon Hazel Green project.
Like Marion County has work to do before this comes back, and I think that's all we're saying is just.
Yeah, and that was the goal, is to add a little more context, make sure we keep that acknowledgement what the application looked like originally. And it will need to be discussed further here, so. Okay, well, I don't have anything else then.
Yep.
Well,
Okay, well, then I think we can move on to agenda item E, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan update or MTP update. Comments on chapters 2 and 3 with Ray. Ray, thank
Okay.
you for cleaning up my suggestions. It looks a lot better.
So there was I apologize for not mentioning this earlier. There was a proposal, I guess, from Kyle Duran to postpone this to allow to next month to allow Marion County, Polk County to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we do that, to postpone this till next month.
I second that.
So in case you couldn't hear, that was Anna seconding.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? I would just, it's an interesting dynamic that has been created with Lyle and Marion County's absence in this meeting.
Agreed.
All those in favor of, pardon?
I just agreed with you, that was all.
All those in, yeah, thank you. All those in favor of tabling a conversation on the necessary conversation around changes in comments to chapters 2 and 3 on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan that have now been in consideration by the Policy Committee for over 2 months, please say aye.
I
Aye.
And I'm going to oppose, so I'll be a nay. But motion passes.
And we'll bring that back either next month, assuming there's any air left in the room after the discussion, or in June.
So I may I ask a question? Sure. So should we consider in the future then postponing conversations unless everyone's in the room?
Or if people have expressed that they'd like to have comments.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you're not here, you generally, we don't postpone it, but if people have said that they want to be part of a conversation, then we can.
That's fair. I agree with that, yeah.
Unfortunately, no one asked to postpone the discussion that is next.
All right. And that, I believe you're referring to item F, Bridges and Safety Infrastructure for Community Success Act.
Yeah, okay, well, so, this, as you said, the interesting dynamics without Marion and Polk County here. So, I've mentioned before, but, oh wait, I should probably share the screen instead of showing it on. Okay. All right. So previously I've mentioned the Federal Surface Transportation reauthorization is happening this year, and there's this thing called the Basics Act. And the reason we're talking about it is there was a proposal to have the MPO chairs who go to OMHOG, Oregon Metropolitan Planning Organization Consortium meeting, have a presentation on Basics Act, and then possibly sign a letter of support to the Oregon congressional delegation. That meeting was to be happening on Friday. So Lyle mentioned he would not be available for this meeting, and Steve and I will talk to him tomorrow about this, but the meeting on May 1st has been postponed to an unknown date. So I don't know if this is going to be on the agenda then or not. But I'll give you a very brief overline of the Basics Act, decide if there's any sort of support. And usually we don't talk about reauthorization because things change between now and then, but because there was a discussion for OMPOC to do this, that's why we're talking about it. And I will mention that this is, well, I'll get to that point. So surface transportation reauthorization, a reminder that reauthorization defines the transportation policy and funding that will happen in a 5 to 6 year window. Currently, we're under the last months of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which was passed in 2021, had about $560, $570 million for transportation projects over 5 years. Reauthorization is underway in the U.S. Congress. Committees in both chambers are working on it. The House and House Transportation and Infrastructure Chairman has made statements about going back to basics, about fundamental needs. He's put his ideas of $500 to $550 billion over 5 years, which is plus money. AMPO, the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, worked with a bunch of other local officials in transportation. They've come up and to discuss this. One of the interesting things about IIJA is it increased the amount of discretionary funding available versus formula. So as you see on the screen, under IIJA, 76% is formula, 24% is discretionary. Discretionary funds are local jurisdictions can apply for them. So those would be your safe routes for all, and various other programs like that. Typically, the reauthorization, the transportation bills are 90-10. So 90% are formula, 10% is discretionary. There's a worry from AMPO or various other jurisdictions that if you move all that money from formula, from discretionary, do the local jurisdictions lose out? And so we have Basics, which is the Bridges and Safety Infrastructure for Community Success Act. And it's introduced in the House of Representatives. It's a marker bill, new language that I've learned since I've had to read up on this. So marker bills signal support for policy, but aren't necessarily meant to be the final bill. There might be some of the language from Basics that get into the final bill or some of the concepts, but this is just supported by this group of organizations that represent pretty much everyone but DOTs and transit districts directly. I'll mention here that AASHTO, so American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, has a proposal or their desires for reauthorization, and APTA, the American Public Transit Association, has their desires. So, this is the period when the announcement just made or whatever, the markup of the bill is happening. So organizations have some ideas of what to, how much and to what. So the brief overline and then included in your packet was a 1-pager and a very limited section by section type of what's in the bill. So possibly of interest to the policy committee, suggest modernizing the PL funds, the planning funds, so increasing the amount overall and increasing the federal share from 80% to 100%, so there would be no local match. And allowing certain MPOs to be direct recipients. Currently, planning funds go through the state DOTs to be distributed to MPOs. Increases the amount of overall funds for state surface transportation block grants and the highway safety improvement programs, and continues the bridge formula program. You'll notice it says 25% sub-allocation, so that is a sub-allocation to local jurisdictions or whatnot. The nice thing about the Basics Act, it's very short, so this will be your final slide. There's, basically they want to emphasize they're not proposing to reducing any state overall funding. The premise is working on what words, directions have been mentioned by the House subcommittee or committee, sorry, specifically that discretionary programs are likely to be reduced. In this bill, while the discretionary programs might be going away, they want to see the total amount of funding not be reduced, as opposed to reducing the programs and reducing the funding. The Basics Act just adjusts how the money is distributed within the remaining formulas, and bringing in Safe Streets for All as a formula and the Bridges program as a formula, as opposed to the current discretionary program. And again, it's just meant to be support for concepts, not to be a final bill. The ask from AMPO and the Association of Counties, Regional Councils, League of Cities, development organizations, they all have on their respective websites support for concepts in this bill. So the question was, assuming that there would be an OMPOC meeting, should Lyle, and there was a question for, should, in general, MPOs agree to sign it, or did the individual MPOs just sign it if they wanted it, as opposed to OMPOC signing a letter of support to the Oregon delegation? And I realize that's probably very weird and very convoluted, but are there any questions about any of this?
Do we know what other MPOs around the state of Oregon have decided to do?
We've heard from three of them.
We've heard from three. So I know that Bend, Central Lane, and was it Metro? Metro have discussed this or will discuss this. And I haven't heard if they've supported it or not. So the last meeting we had was in between, so Eugene was going to talk about it. Central Line, sorry, was going to talk about it this week or last week. So there was, and it does.
Sorry, I'm just looking at your stuff, your information in the agenda, and this expires September 30th of this year, so 5 months from now, and presumably a vote is taken prior to that. We're gonna having the discussion on May 1st, but we don't know what anybody else is doing.
Well, we don't know what the other MPOs are doing, and it really doesn't. Their actions aren't material to whether or not this board wants to support the Basics Act or not, or allow Lyle to sign and support. The reauthorization of the next transportation bill, whatever it may be named, will possibly be October 1st. There is a long history of Congress not meeting the dates and having continuing resolutions. So if you were a betting person, the money would be on a continuing resolution due to all the other items that Congress is currently not working their way through. And so
yeah, I would sign anything that says, could Congress please get this work done on time so that we have But I don't have strong feelings about the merits or needs for improvement on the Basics Act, to be honest with you. But I'll be happy to hear from other committee members should they feel strongly about the changes that are being discussed.
Ray prefaced this by saying we don't usually talk about the reauthorization, mainly because there are going to be so many changes between now and its eventual reauthorization that it's a continually moving target. So it's only generally when it gets kind of within shot of potentially being discussed and adopted.
Yeah.
We have a tendency to bring that information forward then.
It's more and it would be interesting to know where the Oregon delegation lands on this issue, or if they're already, I'm sure there are members that are already in part of the conversations that are going on, and so where they are on the amount of funding, where the funding goes, and any other changes that are proposed. So it would be interesting, but we don't have any of that information.
Okay.
Is
Well,
this-
if
Is the Safe Streets for All going to close at the end of the year, or will it continue?
TBD. It's part of IIJA, so if there's a continuing resolution, Safe Streets for All will continue until that continuing resolution is expired. It will depend on how people write the next bill. So it could be in or it could not be in. It has good support, so I would think it would be in, but we don't have a magic ball into.
Any idea how this would impact our local jurisdictions like Kaiser and our smaller communities?
Without the formula funds tend to go to DOTs and then get distributed. Discretionary programs are open to local jurisdictions. So if there's less funding available overall, the local jurisdictions would see less possible. But since it's discretionary, it's also competitive. So there's no guarantee that you would want it anyway. So theoretically, you're losing money, but you might not, because you might not have won the grant anyway. Yes, Mel.
Sorry, I'm assuming I'm gonna get the same to Safe Routes to School. Although didn't the governor already say?
There's not a federal Safe Routes to School program funding, but yeah, our state does set aside at times funding for, or more recently, they redirected the Safe Routes to School funding at the state level. And then here at the MPO, we usually use our transportation alternatives or our surface transportation block grant funding for our regional Salem-Keizer Safe Routes to School.
I would say any opportunity, any local jurisdiction has to keep control of money, they should keep it. So I don't, at this level, I don't support whatever it's called that they put up there, but I'm just one person on the committee, so I'll defer with everyone else.
And so I guess there are three
Well,
actions that are possible. No action, yes, no.
No action.
The action requested was informational.
Right, yeah, sorry.
So is it just informational or asking?
yeah, this isn't listed as
No, it's a bit.
I don't think we can make a decision on it if it's listed as informational in the packet.
Right, it's true. And
Am I wrong?
the meeting's not happening. It was mainly, what is if Lyle was here, there would be conversation and he could do that for you, everyone is, and then if it's presented to them in the Hallmark meeting, does he feel good signing anything?
Which we don't know when the OMPOC meeting is, so that's the other,
Likely sometime in May. I
Yeah.
think.
okay.
So
So-
before we meet again, more than likely.
Unless it depends on scheduling and
Yeah.
that could be difficult for,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah,
everyone's
We don't know.
various schedule to get 20 to 30 people on shorter, within a month, so.
So
I thought it said it was on May 1st.
So that was the original date, and then I got an email this morning, actually, about an hour before we met, that it's canceled because there is a conflict with Governor Kotek's Transportation Vision Work Group. So that's why they're
Okay.
rescheduling the OMPOC meeting.
Right.
So
Well,
you could also, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it feels like we have covered what we need to cover, and then there's not much beyond the information that's been shared with the committee for us to do with this item.
Yeah, and I will just
Is that right?
say to Lyle that we discussed it and there was discussion. And since we have no action and we don't have a OMPOC meeting date, so we don't need to decide it, it will just be listed as such.
Great. I think that brings us to agenda item D, which is our summary of tip modifications.
Okay, so there's a page in the back of the packet, and I can share it as well here. With an overview of the modifications that took place since our last meeting. There were 5 of them. This first one will look familiar. That's was reviewed and approved by the policy committee last month, relating to the Salem Transit Center's grant award of 5339 bus and bus facilities funding. And the next 4, so numbers 2 through 5, which I'll enlarge a little more, are all administrative amendments that were approved by staff. So mostly minor editing in the case of the Transit 5307 program, literally adding 2 words to the project description just to make sure FTA would okay the approval of the project scope when reviewing the grant. The next one down is our Salem-Keizer MPO funding for the upcoming state fiscal year. And there was an increase in about $550,000 there. And what that is our rollover of unspent MPO funding from state fiscal year 2025. It gets rolled over and into a year forward, or 2 years forward anyway. And then the last 2 was a new project that was for 5310 program, which is senior and people with disabilities transit funding. And this was moving funding from some existing key numbers into a new, some 2 existing key numbers into a new key number for what year? I think for 2027. And the last one is has to do with the Center Street Bridge project. So this was an approval moving $450,000 from the other phase to the preliminary engineering phase. And the reasoning is to pay for or help pay for delay costs because the Coast Guard has been shut down. There's some delays in getting permits to work in the water. And so ODOT's expecting that to cost during their design phase about another close to another $500,000. And it might impact the timeline as well. But Anna, did you have any more info on that?
Yeah, so they're partially working right now. The US Coast Guard is. So then they are working on our permit. But we had to delay the bid date. We originally had a bid date of April. And now we're looking at September. So we go to the OTC next week for approval of phase 2. And hopefully that will move through, and then we'll be bidding in September. But The Coast Guard permit is being reviewed right now. The Coast Guard's asked us for a few things. We should have it by the time we go to work in the water next year. So we've been delayed just basically about a year, I guess, when it comes down to it.
Okay, so that's.
And then,
um,
I just had a question about the Salem-Keizer area MPO planning. Is that related to the cost increase that we discussed around the Unified Planning Work Program, where ODOT is funding us less, so we're contributing more, and it's increasing the share that different SKATS participants are paying, and we've had discussions. Is it the same?
It's the same project as that, but Mike's, the table that we were using in our Unified Planning Work Program would have already incorporated this rollover funding. This is just the action that officially moves it from the previous key number to this key number. So that was already factored into the match calculations, I believe. That was my understanding.
Okay. And there is conversation yet to be had, as I understand. That's kind of just hanging out there, the match contributions from participating jurisdictions to support the Unified Planning Work Program and MPO work overall.
I think Mike had mostly in mind what it was going to take place from last month's meeting.
Yeah.
And he was going to do the follow-up through the invoicing, sending out invoices, but I think he had his direction from the last meeting.
Because when I read the minutes, I mean, it reflected what I said, which was I could not speak for the entire board without consulting them. And Kyle Duran's notes were the same. He needed to consult. So I felt pretty sure that we would be taking up the conversation again with the policy committee. And quite honestly, I think it's very necessary that we do so. Based on my conversations with the board that I have not been able to reflect back to the policy committee. So I don't know what Mike would be making in terms of a decision based on my input, because I haven't had the opportunity to offer it.
He might just be, and it's fortunate that everyone that needs to talk today is not here, but it could be that his idea was to send the invoices as originally, whatever the original amount is, and
just see who created.
And then have a conversation. I don't know. We'll have to bring the next month when Mike is here because we're probably in the dark as much as you on all the invoicing that goes on for match.
Yeah. And I guess I would go ahead and proactively recommend that we not have a conversation in the unlikely event that I'm unable to attend the meeting.
I catch all that.
What was that? Yeah, I got only part of you blank.
I said, it sounds good. Let's have Mike agenda this for next month's meeting. And I will say in advance, if I'm unable to attend next month's meeting, please push the conversation out until I am able to attend.
Will do.
Just like we did today.
Yes, we'll
Thank
pass that
you.
on. I think this is definitely a discussion that everyone needs to be present.
Agreed. Well, I think that concludes our agenda items for today. I think this is usually a point where Mike gives us, well, actually, sometimes the listed agenda items are not all in. Have I gone through everything? Informational
Yes.
items, sorry. Yeah, that's the one that I always miss when I'm chairing these meetings because of the way the packet's built.
Yeah, so informational, May 26th, there'll be a public hearing for the tip. And you'll be asked for adoption request at that time. We'll also bring back at least the discussion of the match if it's ready in May. The TAC will meet on the 12th of May to talk about long-range plan updates. OMPOC obviously is at some date between now and August 7th. There will be a makeup meeting, hopefully. OTC next week to talk about phase 2 of Center Street Bridge and some other items. And as you see, we did a administrative adjustment to the UPWP as we received new FDA 5303 funds, the final amount, so we had to put that into the tables. The match comes from Transit District. Thank you, Transit District. You also get most of the new funds anyway, so that has been posted to the website if anybody wants to see the tables that changed. And that's all I have, Steve or Kim. No, staff is here.
All right. Well, I have nothing further to share with the group. If other members have anything to add, feel free to speak up. And if not, I believe we can adjourn this meeting. It is 1:21 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.